Hello, everybody. My name is Tgir.fyi, and I am the political fish. It's been a long time since I've done a Q&A. Yeah, no, it's been a long time since I've been on video here as well. So it is my pleasure, though, to introduce those you haven't met. You've met him before, Mr. Matthew Cooper. If you'd like to introduce yourself, and so what's your name? What do you do? And then we'll get into it.
Hi, I'm Matthew Cooper, either or. I am just a general political nerd and news junkie, as most are on this on the old bullet chat. And I am looking for work. I have no occupation at the moment, but whatever goes.
Okay. Now, you're kind of different from everybody else in the bullet chat. Do you want to talk about your disability before we move on?
So when I was 6 months old, I was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, which in plain English is cancer of the retina. So I am a very rare case because I had the cancer in both of my retinas. So I had both my eyes removed. So I actually have plastic eyes. Prosthesis. So that means I have no sight at all, no light perception, no nothing. So yeah, I'm a blind guy.
Okay, interesting. And sorry, how old were you when you were diagnosed? And
6 months old.
6 months old. Wow. So do you have any memories of having?
So apparently, because I've thought about this and I've asked many sort of medical people as well. Apparently people in my position don't have conscious memory of it, because I don't remember seeing. I don't know what the sensation is like even. But we do have subconscious memory of it, because they do say that those who have had sight as a baby but lost it young have a better spatial awareness than those who did not have sight at birth.
Oh, interesting.
So in some ways it benefited me, in other ways it did. It's one of those weird ones.
So with that in mind, I'll move on to my first question. So what is your favorite color?
Black. Because black is the absence of color. Is why it's my favorite color.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Absence of light, absence of color. It's very when we were doing the color, we're doing the word association. We come up with blue, cool. Red. You said blood, which is quite interesting.
I said blue sky, didn't I?
Oh yeah, you
said that was surprising to you.
Yeah, because you associate blue with the sky. And again, red with blood. Associating that with blood if you've never seen it. If you understand. But okay, excellent. Favorite movie? Again, it's an interesting question.
See, I'm not a massive movie person, but blind people do watch movies because we have this marvelous thing called audio description. Probably the Star Wars franchise generally, I would say, is what I would consider my favorite series of movies. If I had to pick one out of those, though, Episode 4. Probably.
Episode 4, A New Hope.
Yeah.
More of an Empire fan myself.
Not a bad movie, but
it just ends on a downer, Yeah. Bad guy wins for a change. I mean, that's where they failed with the episode
8.
Episode 8. That's where they failed. The bad guy should have won. Should have dominated in that one. But it's
there are so many problems with that episode. I liked it. I'm not one of these people who are all over social media going, it's horrible, I hate it. No, I quite liked it, but there were problems with it.
Yeah. I feel that. I feel that. Favorite author or book or both?
Ooh. Favorite book, and it's something I read a long time ago. It's by a guy called Ishmael Bayer.
Right.
And it's a book called A Long Way Gone, and it's about his experience as a child soldier in Sierra Leone. And it's really bloody depressing, but it's a really interesting read. I urge everyone to go read it if they can find it.
Oh, that sounds like a real downer.
But it's really interesting as well, because it does have a positive end. So.
Is that both encapsulating your favorite author and book, or do you have a
favorite author. I've just started reading a bunch of the. Is his name James Follett? The guy who does the Century series. I
don't
could
know.
have his name wrong, but the guy who does the Century series, and apparently a lot of his other work is very similar. The Fall of Giants, all that sort of stuff. They're really good fiction books, but based on historical events. So the Century series follows the history through the 20th century from a British, American, and Russian perspective, and it's really interesting.
Oh, really? Okay,
So
cool.
worth the read if you can find it.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Century series, definitely. I'll bear that one in mind.
The first book of it is called Fall of Giants. I know that much. So
right.
Go find that.
Okay. Cool. Do you tend to read more fiction or non-fiction?
More non-fiction, but I do read some fiction. But usually the fiction I read is based on history. It's usually historical fiction. I like some fantasy stuff. Like one of my favorite books as a kid was Lord of the Rings, but then the way that J.R.R. Tolkien writes, it's really really long-winded and difficult to get through. But the story is just captivating. But yeah, I tend to go for non-fiction.
Okay, so Nikki M says those books are by Ken Follett.
Ken Follett. I knew I got the name wrong.
Yeah. Ken Follett. Thank you, Nikki M, for that
Cheers.
swift correction there. Straight on there. Like
love the side chat. They always there to check us.
Yeah, definitely.
Best research department going.
Talking of which, we have Mr. Cameron Hempman inside chat, Jack James and Nikki M, and of course the Right Honourable Nosferatu, as we mentioned, Blood. Oh, you're up a bit early, aren't you, Nosferatu?
I bet you got very excited when you heard that word.
Indeed. What are you reading now?
I am nearly at the end of the Paul Mason book on post-capitalism, which you sent me, actually.
Yeah.
Which is really, really interesting. I'm about 3/4 of the way through that.
He really doesn't want to call it communism, does he?
No. And to be fair, I can see why. There are some distinct differences. It's not quite the same.
It would be kind of a Leon Trotsky if Leon Trotsky was born like 20 years ago, you know, and he became an economist. That's what I would imagine the sort of thing he would write. It's a bit dense in the middle.
But it's worth getting through it. It's definitely worth getting through it.
Yeah, definitely. Just to listen to his fuck ups, really, because he reads it.
Oh my god, his reading is awful.
I know, right?
But it's worth suffering through it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. Okay, excellent. So moving on. Beatles, Elvis, or the Rolling Stones?
That's a really easy one. Beatles.
Really?
Beatles every time. Love their music. My dad used to love the Beatles, and I listened to a lot of their music as a kid. When I went to university, because I did popular music and record production at university, I spent a lot of time listening to John Lennon. So a lot of his solo stuff.
Excellent. See, I edge between the Beatles. Some days I'm a Beatles person. Other days I'm a Rolling Stones fan.
Stones are okay, but I could take them or leave them. Honestly, Elvis definitely not.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. I understand that. I'm not sure if this is another stupid question, but I asked.
We'll see.
I asked Kevin this question, and as soon as I asked it, I was just like, "That was a fucking stupid question." But yeah, dogs or cats?
Dogs. I have a guide dog. Love dogs.
Have you always loved dogs?
Yes, I was brought up with dogs in the house ever since I was a baby. So I've always loved dogs.
Yeah, fair enough. And so having a work dog. You said, how old's your work dog now?
He's not far off retirement. He's got about a year or so left. He's 8.5 years old. So he's got about a year left, and then they retire. So they get to live the last years in leisure.
Yeah. What do they do? Send it to a retirement home, or they
send them to another family?
Glue?
They say they send it. They send it to another family.
Yeah.
So you can nominate a family, and I'll probably end up nominating my parents because they love him to bits, and they've got a big house with a big garden. So he'll be happy with that, I think.
Okay. Nikki N says she's a massive audiobook listener. Me too, actually, because
Yes.
I'm a really bad reader. So what I've got is I've got a Dropbox at the moment. And if you want to Twitter me your email account, what I'll do is I'll copy you in, and then every month or two, what I do is I swap the books out and put another 3 books in there. All you need to do is just copy them to your hard drive, and yeah, you can listen to them. It's about I'm a bit lazy, so it tends to be about every month to 6 weeks. I'll swap them out and put another 3 in. But if you want to, Nikki, it's no effort on your part. Just send me your email address. So yeah, right. Aliens or Predator?
I not really follow the series very closely of either of them. I guess I'd say Alien.
Okay, fair enough. If you don't really follow them,
Not really on that one.
Can I ask how old you are?
25.
25. All right. That makes sense. I mean, one of my favorite movies ever was the actual movie called Aliens. It's probably the greatest sequel ever made. And that was released in like 85, 86. Still incredibly relevant.
Yeah, I'm right in thinking that's the one where John Hurt has the thing break out of his
No,
chest.
that was the original. That was the
the
original, which was Ridley Scott, directed by Ridley Scott. This one was directed by James Cameron, and the Ridley Scott original was 1978, 79, something like that. So yeah, that's the one with John Hurt. But yeah, this one's Michael Benn.
John Hurt is a really good narrator of documentaries, by the way.
Is he? Oh,
yeah.
Oh. Well, could you recommend a documentary?
There's one he did, which I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but it was on Netflix for a while. It's about the effects of Hiroshima, and he interviewed a bunch of the surviving people, civilians of the time, and how they remember the blast in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And he even speaks to somebody who experienced both. So yeah, it's an interesting documentary, and he is the narrator. He's also from Derby, which is the same city I live in. I'm not from here, but I live here now. So yeah.
Oh, actually, excellent. Yeah, he's obviously a great actor, and that scene will forever be in the history books for one of the scariest, most creepiest scenes ever. So okay, so moving on to politics then. This is a really difficult question to define, especially as everything's usually quite fluid, right? But what would you say is your political position?
I am a drifter. So when I was very young, I used to consider myself a bit of a right winger. When I was very, very like a teenager, I used to consider myself a bit of a right winger. And then I went to college and met a teacher called Bob Ross, who introduced me to the idea of a resource-based economy, and I became a bit of an anarchist for a good couple of years. And then I went to university and read a bit more and became more of a sort of democratic socialist. And I've kind of stayed in that vein. I've gone more towards, I guess, social democrat than democratic socialist as I've gotten older. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, sort of centre left, soft left.
Yeah, or hard left if you're in the UK. God, if that's hard left, I'd hate to see what I am. God, dear, oh dear. You know, these people with their universal education and their NHS. God.
I mean, well, we definitely are the far left in the US, and I'm massively interested in US politics, and we're definitely the far left of the US.
Oh yeah. So. Thank God it's not the US, eh?
It's like democratic socialist in the US basically means social democrat. They've confused the terms, and so democratic socialist that's literally what it means now.
I always get confused between the two terms anyway.
Yeah.
Politically, there's
there's a line that separates them, and I think the difference really is, well, I think Thomas in the Bullet Chat puts it quite well every time. Do you want to see the overthrow of capitalism? If you do, then you're more of a socialist than a Democrat. And I tend to fall on the side of no. I think capitalism is a system that will eventually disappear, but I don't necessarily want to overthrow it, if that makes sense. I want to regulate it and reform it, sure, but I don't think that overthrowing it would necessarily fix things.
Indeed. So I want to keep this next question restricted. Well, okay. Let's. I'm gonna ask the question, and then we'll see where we're going from there. Okay. So, who's your favourite current MP? It doesn't have to be a current.
That's tough. The more I see, sod it. You know what? Emotional appeal. Dennis Skinner. Dennis Skinner. Slightly biased because he's a Derbyshire MP, but Dennis Skinner is just genius. And he is one of the most principled members of Parliament that you'll ever come across. And even if I completely disagree with you, and I like Dennis Skinner, and I generally agree with his positions, but if you're a Conservative and you're a principled Conservative and you tend to stay on the same line regardless, I have a lot more respect for you than a sort of manoeuvring politician. So yeah, like a Tree Frogs. Yeah. I have a decent amount of respect for Tree Frogs. Not to say that I like him, but I respect him because he is pretty firm on what he believes in, and you definitely know where he stands on pretty much everything.
Yeah. It's as Ben said, there are two types of politicians. They're signposts and weather vanes.
Exactly.
So, my problem with Tree Frogs is he can be very, very hypocritical. Lecturing people on the evils of abortion, yet have shares in a company that sells abortion pills. Is a bit hypocritical for my taste.
Yes, I hear that, but then okay, who isn't? Find me somebody who is just not hypocritical. That isn't a thing. There is no such thing as a person who is not hypocritical, however well intentioned they might be and however they might try. You will always find people that are hypocritical, myself included. Everyone has their little thing that they get hung up on. So yeah, I think hypocrisy is something that should be called out, of course, but to expect it to just disappear in politics is expecting, I don't know, rain in the desert. It's not particularly likely.
Okay, so I understand completely. Yeah. Worst MP? It doesn't have to be worst MP or MP you like the least, or MP. I mean, it depends on how you want to define that question. It's up to you.
Until about a month ago, I would have said John Woodcock until he resigned. I am now, I'd say.
Oh, hang on. Before we move on to John Woodcock, right now, obviously he's had it in for cool and gold. I mean, the guy's a fucking twat. I mean, let's make no bones about it. The guy's an absolute shitbag, right? But there is. Why do you think he resigned? Do you think he resigned because of this anti-Semitism bullshit, or do you think it was because of the investigation into?
I suspect it was the investigation. I can't be sure. And there's a lot of stuff that's been going on. And I don't even think it was the anti-Semitism thing. I think the likelihood of a centrist party springing up and him being able to join that, I think, is tantalizing to him. But the main reason I dislike him is the fact that your CLP wanted you gone in 2015.
Yeah.
And you hung on and you ran again in 2017. And you specifically run against your party leader. And your campaign is, I hate Corbyn, but vote for me anyway.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily a Jeremy Corbyn thing. It's how much he despises the leader of the party he's supposed to represent.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's Corbyn or not for me. The other side to that is he basically destroyed the majority he had in a seat which should be quite safe. and needed the help of Labour HQ and Momentum to get him his seat, and then he and then he continues the dance, as it were.
Yeah.
So I have zero respect for the man. I think he's a bit of a scumbag, honestly.
But at least he had the decency to resign.
Eventually,
yeah.
Yeah, at least he eventually resigned, or resigned the whip anyway. I wish he would step down and allow a by-election, but I don't think he'd ever do that. I think he likes power too much.
Is he now going to stand as an independent, though?
Well, he is an independent.
All right.
He is now an independent, and he's not going anywhere until an election, anyway.
Yeah, he should have allowed a by-election, definitely.
Current worst MP.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's tough.
From either side of the
aisle. I would have said Chuka Umunna. All right, if you want one from either side, Chuka Umunna on the Labour side, and Boris Johnson on the Conservative side, because he is exactly the sort of politician I cannot stand. The opportunist, the ultra weather vane. Using your earlier example, he is the embodiment of everything I dislike in politics.
Yeah, where he wrote, what was it? He wrote the 2 articles for the Telegraph, depending on the Brexit result, didn't he?
And he was one of the big fearmongers about Turkey joining the EU, not long after making a piece for TV about how awesome it would be if Turkey joined the EU. I mean, just no. The guy is a horrible man.
Yeah, he is. He is a horrible man. Let's see who we've got. What people were saying on the side chat. We do have a quick question from Right Honourable Nosferatu before we move on. Have you ever been bitten by a vampire?
No.
No.
Can't suppose I have.
No, neither have I, actually, on that matter. Okay. So, Angels. Hello, Angels, by the way. Boris Johnson, West MP. Yeah. At the moment, she does qualify with that at the moment. With I take with regards to the article he wrote with regards to the Burke, which is
the letterbox gate.
Yeah. Oh dear, Well, Shafter says, I've been bitten by vampiric Tories several times. A lot of people have, those Tory vampires sucking the blood of the poor. Philip Davis from Thomas Williams. Okay, yeah, definitely, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a good
shout.
Yeah, it's a good shout. But Boris Johnson, I think, because of his ambitiousness, is worse, because his eventual aim is to run the country, isn't it? Philip Davis is just a troublemaker. He's a scumbag, sure, but he's just a troublemaker. I don't think he holds leadership ambitions.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of the danger with Boris Johnson is his ambition, and he will literally do anything to get into number 10.
Exactly.
And it's dear. Anyway. West MP Cameron Hickman, Ian Duncan Smith. Oh, that man sends.
He's the one I have the most. Hatred is the wrong word, but I think you get what I'm saying. He's the one I have the most. I would like to speak to, and tell him what he's done to people in my position because of his regime as DWP secretary. That is disgusting, what he did as DWP secretary.
Yeah.
Esther McVeigh is up there, but I don't think anywhere near as bad as as IDS, because IDS pretends to be compassionate. At least with Esther McVeigh, and this goes back to what I was saying before. At least with Esther McVeigh, you know exactly where she stands. There's no pretense with her, really.
Moving on, actually, Welsh After says, Cam and Esther McVeigh. Yeah. I mean, those two are horrid.
Put it this way, my partner isn't into politics to quite the same degree that I am, and doesn't really know who Esther McVeigh is, or didn't, at least until recently. And she heard her voice on the TV when I was watching her apology for misleading Parliament. And and I quote directly, "That woman sounds evil." Just her voice on its own sounds evil. Like, you know, if that tells you nothing, I don't know what to do for you.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, James Fielding said, if he's, who do you think James Fielding said is the worst MP?
The absolute boy.
The absolute boy, Corbyn, yeah, of course. Cameron Hickman says, my dad met Ian Duncan Smith, and both my dad and Ian Duncan Smith hate each other. So, there you go.
Well, there you go.
There we go. I think, yeah. Right, okay. Now, you kind of touched on this question before with your teacher, but what was what got you into politics? You said you're quite right wing before you got into
politics. Because I used to listen to a lot of talk radio as a kid, and so I kind of fell into the trap of all that. And I used to listen to a lot of American stuff because I've always had a fascination with the rest of the world. When I was a very, very small kid, I had access to a shortwave radio, right? So I used to listen to what 7 or 8 year old listens to things like the Voice of Russia for fun. But yeah, that was what I used to do as a little kid, and so I've always had a real interest in international affairs and international culture and all the rest of it. It's just me, and I became a bit of a right winger, and then my interest in, I guess, solutions as opposed to politics itself was piqued by my college teacher. Politics I've always had an interest in. I met when I was 6.5. I was involved with a charity called Kids, not Kids Co, but Kids. It's a different group, and they had an AGM in London, and David Blunkett was invited to speak, and so I actually got to meet David Blunkett. And then at the same, well, not at the same event, but a different event with the same organisation, I got to go to Downing Street and meet Gordon Brown.
All right.
So my interest in politics was sort of kindled then, because I was like, oh, there's this blind guy and he works in Parliament and he has he has say on what happens over the country as a whole. And I always wanted to be involved in things like that.
A political powerhouse, actually, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you know, there's a role model for blind people everywhere. Look at what he managed to do.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, so I've been interested in politics since I was a little kid.
Okay. So, when you say you're quite right wing, and then obviously you met your friend, your teacher, lecturer, college, university time. What kind of policies would you say would make you right wing? As in scapegoating?
Well, I was when I was, because I didn't know any better. I fell into the trap of the whole scapegoat migrants thing.
Sure.
When I was very young. But then that was just, I didn't know any better. I hadn't really experienced anything. I grew up in a very sort of an extremely white area. I never had any. I never really mixed with immigrants or even people of a different skin color to my own, apart from my 2 cousins. That was it. So it was just, I don't know, it was just stupid naivety. And I grew up, basically.
Yeah. Okay. It's weird, because everybody says that you start off left wing, like idealistic and left wing when you're young, and then as you grow older.
I went from the right to the far left, and then I've kind of moderated as I've gotten older. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, and you kind of, as you grow up and you get access to capital, you become more capitalistic and individualistic, I suppose, as you get older. But no, it's bollocks. It's all bollocks, mate. I mean, even Ben himself, he says that he started off on the left and ended further on the left than when he started, and then he left. He had to leave Parliament to concentrate on his politics, which is weird.
Yeah, it's very odd, isn't it?
Yeah, it is indeed. So we're down to our final question. Okay. So what I want you guys in the side chat is, do you have any questions for Matthew?
Be brutal, go on.
Be brutal. Oh, they're trolling each other now. Like, honestly, you can't take this lot anywhere. I'm telling you, they're like a bunch of squabbling children sometimes.
Exactly.
But yeah. Well, Shafted says, I don't think I'll be voting Tory at my old age. No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think I would ever quite go that far.
No.
But then I do have respect for some conservatives. I'm not completely. I'm not one of these who views an entire group of people as this one homogenous group. I think there are some respectable right wingers out there. I mean, we've got a few in our own audience. I mean, look at people like this new guy who's joined us recently, the Stephen Owen guy. He's a really, really interesting guy.
Yeah.
And he's got some interesting views on things. This sort of, the Burkean conservative group of people are fascinating to listen to. And I have a lot of respect for them. I disagree with them on things, but then that's how we should operate. I am a firm believer in cross the aisle discourse. I think it doesn't hurt anyone to do that.
If you were to pick a favourite Tory MP, who would it be?
See, this is a tough one. Favourite Tory MP?
Or anyone from the right, really. I mean, like, it has to be on the opposite side of the aisle, though. So you can't pick a right-wing Labour MP, for instance.
No. Favourite figure on the right? I'm kind of stuck on that one. I would have said before he became Brexit Secretary. And I have to stress that David Davis, because of his stance on sort of libertarianism and the way he handled the sort of Snoopers Charter and how he was a very, very outspoken critic of all that. I had a lot of respect for him until he became Brexit Secretary. Well, he became Brexit Secretary and he was exposed as an incompetent, bumbling moron.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time I respected him quite a lot because of his stances on that. Maybe like a Peter Hitchens type figure, I suppose.
Oh, a figure on the right. Okay.
Yeah. If you're after a figure on the right.
Okay, cool. Matt, it's from Cameron Hickman, by the way. Do you think Tony Benn was right on the European Union?
I think at the time, probably not. I think as a trading bloc, the EU is a sensible idea. The problem with the EU came when it became more federalistic. I think actually Thatcher had it right when she said that she was concerned that the European Union was going to become a massive federal organisation that was just interested in power grabbing. The one thing Thatcher got right. So that I think that's where it went wrong. If it had stayed as a common market and nothing more, I think it would have been. It would have. We would never have even thought of leaving. It would have been a fringe thing still. But no, that's what killed the EU, and I think that is what will save it in a weird way, because there is such a strong pushback from within the EU now. Unfortunately, it's coming from the far right, but it is causing the EU to stop and think about what it's doing. You've got, the Eastern Bloc countries, the Hungarys, your Polands, your Italys, even Sweden with the Swedish Democrats, because they are so repugnant, and because what the EU is doing is pushing people towards these sorts of parties. I think the EU is having to stop and think about what it does. And I think that might actually mean that they eventually will reverse course on the whole federalistic idea.
They'll actually roll back.
Yeah. So I think in that is the one thing that the far right has done, which could be seen as a positive. The far right, I'm not for a second endorsing the far right, don't misunderstand me, but that is the one sort of positive effect of all of this.
Okay. James Fielding just pipped in there with his favourite tax dodging, coke sniffing Tory MP being George Osborne. So no bias.
Here's an interesting one. George Osborne, since he left Parliament, has become a very interesting guy to hear interviewed, because he doesn't hold back very much. And you see how weirdly liberal but not he is. if that makes sense. So, like, economically, he isn't at all. But socially, he's an incredibly liberal guy. And he did an interview with Nick Clegg on his podcast. And he's basically saying that he came from a family of liberal Democrats. And became a conservative because he didn't agree with their economics, and he became chancellor off the back of that. And like, if he was in Parliament in any other role, I wonder if he would be anywhere near as demonized as he's become now. Because that was basically the only real conservative part of him, is his economics.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's a strange old character, is
indeed.
Being a
Gideon.
he was
What a name.
I know, right? So he was a history bachelor, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Turned economist. How does that work? I don't quite.
Who knows, man? People have all sorts of whacked out interests. I mean, I was a music guy. That's what I studied at college and university, and I'm all I do is sit here and look at politics all day.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know.
There are worse things to do. Silly season must be the worst time for you.
It drives me back. But then my main interest is international news, and so I've always got something to keep me going. Like my main focus the past couple of days has been this spat between Canada and Saudi Arabia, which is out of hand, and no one in the British press is talking about it, and it's really sad. The best British voice I've heard on it so far is Sunny Hundell. He has been covering it quite extensively on his Twitter feed, but if you're not reading the Canadian press, you're not hearing about this story.
Oh, right. Okay. Interesting.
And it's really quite serious, actually.
In what respect it's really quite serious? Did you put it in a nutshell?
Al Arabiya were running infographics depicting planes flying into the CN Tower.
Right. Shit. Oh.
Yeah, that's that level.
Fucking hell.
And it's all because Canada decided to speak out for the women who have been locked up for advocating for women's rights to drive. The women activists who are advocating for that, because they've been locked up, the Canadians had a problem with it. They said something about it, unlike the rest of the Western world, and Saudi lost their temper.
Well, you know, we're chum buddies with Saudi Arabia, aren't we?
Exactly.
Got to keep those weapons sold to someone. So, and illegal cluster bombs and what have you. So, okay, we're gonna come on, guys, in the side chat. Any more questions from that before I move on to the final question? Yeah, that's quite harsh. You know, I'm surprised.
Exactly.
Absolutely nobody's got the balls, especially as it's silly season as well.
Yeah, you know, no one's got the balls to talk about it, and we've had diplomats being expelled. Saudi have basically told all their diplomats to go home from Canada. They've made Saudi students leave Canada. They've given them a month to come home. There's all sorts of ramifications here, and we're just completely ignoring it. There's this thing happening in Canada, but don't worry about it. Don't trouble your pretty little head about it. It's fine. Like, no, it's really not. This is quite a serious situation here.
Yeah,
and we're just ignoring it.
I wonder what would happen. Are Canada still part of the Commonwealth? Because they still have the Queen on their banknotes and stuff.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
the Queen is still technically their head of state.
Yeah,
they're one of the few countries, even in the Commonwealth, where the Queen is still the head of state.
So yeah, be interesting to see where the government's loyalty lies if there is any terrorist action on.
I'll put it this way: Mr. Reformer Mohammed bin Salman has been exposed as a fraud over the past couple of months, just on its own. Just the way he's acting, he's been exposed as a massive fraud. He's liberalising out of necessity rather than out of want, and I think people have confused the two things.
Yeah. Okay. All right then. Strap yourself in, mate. Are you ready for your final question?
Oh, go on then.
Okay. What is your chosen weapon in a zombie apocalypse?
If we're in a zombie apocalypse, we might as well just nuke the whole thing.
Take off the nuke site from...
Just boom. Just we're all fucked anyway, so you might as well.
What about some of us that might be on a struggle on, like in Walking Dead or something? You're taking the choice out of our hands, you know?
Well. What likelihood do you have of surviving in a real zombie apocalypse? And I'm blind. I've got no chance. I'm buggered. So
All
you know
right.
what?
Take off and nuke the site from orbit. Yeah, nice one.
Just try. That's it.
Do I have a chance to put the kettle on first? I mean, God, come on, let me have a cup of tea before you nuke the place. Imagine, look, is he going to try and nuke the place again? Yeah. Can you remember the clearing up we had to do last time? I know, it took us ages, didn't it? Oh.
Oh God.
Fair enough, mate. It's an original answer. I can't. I'm speechless,
Look,
mate.
I'm under no illusion. I'm not going to survive in this situation. So you know what? Might as well just all go out with a bang.
Oh, come on, like if you're going to survive in any kind of horror show kind of situation, zombie apocalypse has got to be right up your street, right? Because
How?
Because they're really, really slow, which is the first thing, and they always make noises when they move.
Not every zombie's really slow. I mean, you've seen other movies; they can run quite fast in some of them.
Right, right. So if you're talking about 28 Days Later, so the guys in 28 Days Later weren't dead. Zombies are dead, right? Now the other thing is there was this comedy show called Death Valley that tried to address this, right? And the way they kind of said it is if it's a fresh zombie, then they move quite fast. They have the ability to run. But if it's an old zombie and like rigor mortis is like kicked in, then they don't. They can only go move and move really, really slowly.
But if they age to a certain degree, will they just fall over?
Maybe.
They just fall down flat because you can't move anymore.
Yeah. But how long do you think that would take?
Well, depends, doesn't it, on how fast rigor mortis sets in and how hot it is and all sorts of things.
I haven't really thought about it that far, to be honest.
All the hot button issues of the day here on the
stream. Yeah. Well, you know, let's just assume that they are the Walking Dead type zombies. Then surely it'll be, you know, right up your street. I mean, oh yeah, there's one. You take your.
All right. If I don't have the option of nuking them,
yeah,
I'd probably want some kind of machine gun slash sniper rifle affair.
Okay. Where are you going to get your bullets from? In Derby?
There'd be stores somewhere.
In Derby?
Somewhere. Well, we live near the RAF. There's an RAF base near here.
Oh, fair enough.
So they must have something.
Yeah. But then you would run out of bullets sooner or later.
Yeah, but how many zombies are there going to be?
As many, assumed for every one person in the UK. Every adult, let's say. That's like.
Well, we've produced so many weapons over the ages. We must have enough stockpile.
Yeah.
Just send them all to the Isle of Wight.
I think a lot of them already are zombies in the Isle of Wight, aren't
they? I'm from Portsmouth. We're just across the water.
Yeah.
Where I'm, born and bred, and the Isle of Wight. It is a proper zombie land over there.
Yeah.
I mean, David Icke lives there. What else?
Yeah, I was going to say, at least the zombies have a chance of meeting David Icke. You know, apparently.
That's probably why he thinks the world's ruled by lizards, because he lives on the Isle of Wight.
Maybe. The boredom's turned him mad.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that or he's seen a particularly wrinkled old git.
Yeah.
And he just thinks that that's a lizard.
Yeah, maybe. All right. All right. Okay. I've got one more question for you, and I don't want it to. So it's just something that reminded me. Yeah, you're in a nutshell. Your Brexit perspective, because I know it's kind of similar to mine, and you kind of put it better than I do. So.
I am what people have started calling a reliever. So I voted reluctant Remain at the referendum because I thought that leaving in charge would be a massive disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Just the status quo would be better for now. If the question came up later, then I depending on what government was in charge, I might have voted leave. I wanted to remain in reform, ideally.
Yeah.
Now we're leaving. It took me a while. It did take me a little while to come round, but I have embraced the idea of Brexit, and I think we can make the most of it. It's just I am afraid of a no deal. I think that would be pretty horrific. I guess you would call me a soft Brexiteer.
Okay.
But I am definitely on the side of leave, not remain.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Fair enough. You said it was reliever was the term.
Reliever. That's what people have started using. That's the term people have started using recently.
Excellent, excellent. So on that note, we're down to the plugs. What have you got going on this week?
I do a podcast. It's me and this libertarian guy in the States. It's a podcast called The Game Is Rigged, and it's basically a 3-hour international news show. So we do an hour on the States, roughly an hour on the UK, usually less actually, and then the rest of the world for an hour, and we get proper in depth on a lot of stuff. The website is Tgir, as in the game is rigged.fyi.
Okay, and that is in the description. The game is rigged. And your Twitter handle is there too, Matt02392.
Feel free to follow. I'm always open for discussion. Even if you firmly disagree with me, I'm more than happy to hear from you, because I love to be convinced of other things. If you think you can change my mind on something, then feel free to have a go.
Excellent, excellent. Also can be seen lurking around the bullet chat.
Yeah, I'm always about somewhere.
Yeah, excellent. This soon, hopefully, I'll have part 3 of the conspiracy theories, which reminds me, I'm looking for people for the panel. I normally have different people appear on the panel to talk about their favorite conspiracy theory. If you're interested, drop me a tweet and we can talk about it if we've had it before. Obviously, I don't want to repeat of anything that's gone before. Some of the conspiracy theories that we've covered are the education system in the UK. We've covered the moon landings, Building 7 on the 9/11, secret tunnels under Parliament, I think it was. Oh, I can't remember. That was Sliders. What else? Aliens, of course, and all sorts of different things. So if you're interested and want to appear on the panel, and talk about your favorite conspiracy theory, drop me a tweet and we'll talk about that. I'm hoping to get this video out, hopefully in a week's time, if not before. So I want to say thank you. Sign off, please, Matthew.
Indeed. Thank you very much for having me. It's been fun.
It's been my pleasure, mate. Anytime. And if you, of course, ever want to do a video with me, if you've got an idea or just something, then I'm happy to collaborate with you on something else in the future.
Awesome.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, guys, in the side chat. Thank you, Well Shafted. Thank you, Nikki M. Craig Brexit. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jody, 1987, Comrade Thomas, Comrade Cam, Comrade all of my comrades, and of course, James Fielding, Tory boy. And thank you very much, guys. Goodbye.